This podcast is sponsored by Pocket Hose.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn. Homeowners, listen up. Before Pocket Hose, garden hoses were heavy, bulky, hard to carry, and always kinking. Then Pocket Hose changed all that. It's the American invention that made watering lighter, easier, and smarter. And now, the world's #1 expanding hose has gone ballistic. Turn on the water and watch it grow from a compact hose into a full-length, powerful hose. Turn off the water and it shrinks right back down, making it easy to carry and easy to store. But now it's even better. With a tough ballistic-infused outer sleeve, a pocket pivot that helps reduce kinks at the spigot, thicker washers to help resist leaks, and UV protection to fight sun damage. And for a limited time, you'll get 2 free gifts, a 360-degree pocket pivot and a thumb drive nozzle. Just go to pockethose.com/podcast. That's pockethose.com/podcast for your 2 free gifts with purchase. pockethose.com/PODCAST.
Welcome to the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Trish.
And this is our podcast. We talk about wrestling news and various topics from different promotions, primarily AEW, but also New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, and topics from around the wrestling world. Whatever we find interesting, and we hope you will too. We're a proud member of the Social Suplex Podcast Network, and you can find our content on our podcast feed, the Social Suplex Podcast feed, as well as on Twitter, Blue Sky, and YouTube. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and rate our podcast. We also encourage you to check out the Social Suplex newsletter, which is published every month and available at socialsuplex.com. Contains crazy amounts of information on promotions across the world, as well as some nice features and other interesting tidbits from here and there. So, Trish, when is the next issue coming out?
Next week.
Next week.
Yep.
Let's go. All right, so today is Monday, June 22nd, 2026, and we're going to kick things off with our dearest friends over at Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. Yes, TNA, which released a press release last week that TNA have Wrestling announced a workforce reduction designed to streamline operations and sharpen strategic focus and profitability. Excuse me. We talked last episode about how folks like Steve Macklin were no longer with TNA. In the last week, the same day came out that Tommy Dreamer is no longer with TNA's Creative and Talents Relation Department. He's left the company, and Tessa Blanchard is also gone. In the case of Tessa Blanchard, it does appear as though TNA gave her you can work for CML or you can work for us, but you cannot work for both. This has been reported in a bunch of different places and seems to be pretty consistent. This is a big shift for TNA because they have traditionally had no problem with their talent working other promotions. And we've seen that recently, even though they have not wanted their talent in matches with AEW talent, they haven't had an issue with people being on the same show. There's a lot of scuttlebutt that this has supposedly been pushed down on them from WWE, who does seem to care who works their promotions, but TNA also seems to not want that perception to be out there. Before we move on to the Tommy Dreamer stuff, Trish, what do you think about the Tessa Blanchard and the sort of line in the sand about working other promotions that TNA sees to be drawing here?
Yeah, so I know that other people have put it at Carlos Silva's kind of door. It makes you feel like he's like a Harold May style character where he doesn't really understand the industry that he's came into. But I think that was an interesting one. I'm waiting to see on that because her partner is Darga, who's just gone into the Peristomal reformed faction in AAA. So I wonder if it's a stopgap, if nothing else, and she ends up there. But I guess we'll see what happens there. But in terms of that, I think it says something about one, people looking at what opportunities are going to take you where, and then secondly, like, how little are they paying?
Right.
How little are they paying that they would be less of a prospect than, either of the, especially CML in Mexico, because you are paid, off the live gate. It's not a predominantly high-paying organization. So if they are paying more than a company with national television in the US, then something's really wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people thought that Tessa Blanchard went to TNA as a path for her to get back into WWE, but she's still met with a lot of chants of Tess as a racist at TNA shows. So, I don't know what to tell you. She's been with CMLL for quite a while, and
it's so easy to miss that extra.
It's
L,
so easy to miss the extra
L.
All
the time. You all the time.
Jesus,
I do all the time.
Spurt it off, but you can't. But we'll have to see what happens with this. I agree with you. It's going to be interesting to see if this happens with anybody else or how this plays out for TNA moving forward. But
yeah. Well, the thing with this is obviously they let Sammy Callahan go as a producer as well.
Yes.
But we're now coming up towards Slammiversary in your city of Boston.
Yep, in Agganis Arena.
Yeah, at the end of the week, it's around a 2,000 mark for tickets out, and has a kind of it's not an interesting looking card. There's no one excited by that card. But then you're looking at that and going, where do they go from here? Because their current men's champion Mike Santana's contract's due up. I think it's pretty obvious that he's going to move on, and he should. Like in terms for him, he's been able to reinvigorate his career in TNA, and that gives him a shot somewhere else. And in effect, if you're going to sell TNA to people, the two ways that have always been a possibility that they should have been trading on is it's a way that it's somewhere you can go that's still on national television where you can kind of rejuvenate your career and give yourself another opportunity. And it's somewhere that if you're younger that you should be able to come in and be able to learn television wrestling in terms of how everything works without the the pressure sort of environment that you may have in the top 2 American companies, but while still being able to work independently. And that's why shutting down kind of who they can work independently with is a bit of an issue, because it takes away something that should be an attraction to your company. How attractive that is when everything's on per day and your usage and everything like that is arguable. But but for him, it's worked out in that regard. But he's going to move on now. Leon Slater, wherever he, but by the time we get into the fall, he's going. We'll see where he goes. If he's still going to go to WWE as most expected over the last year, especially after he appeared on a John Cena show, or whether he's going to choose to go elsewhere. But he's going to move on. So then it's like, who have you got left? Who have you got to sell these shows, as a live prospect, which is nowhere near as close as what it was last year. They're not in that same position as they were last year from live ticketing. And yes, a lot of those were comps, but then there was that marketing behind it. There is no marketing this year. It doesn't exist. We're not seeing that level of kind of push behind it as there were when it was coming to obtaining a TV deal. And that's why it makes me question, as I mentioned last episode, whether how much WWE were involved in that, because you're now seeing that shift towards AAA. But it's like, so you don't have that marketing, so you don't have that thing that's going to bring people in as a live attraction. You're still just basically going off the nostalgia here of the Hardys. But where's you going to have that excitement that's going to get people to come back like twice or 3 times or 4 times when you go back to each market? Because something that's said here actually in a lot of sports, smaller sports, is we have no problem getting people through the door the first time. And you'll see this in wrestling all the time, but we have problems getting to come back twice. And we see this, if you look at like first time in a market to second time in a market, we talk about with AEW all the time as well. But with TNA, it's like you're seeing big differences when they go back to markets that they drew well in last year. And this is all part of it. So it does feel like an uncertain future. And the usage of things like workplace reduction doesn't make you feel like this is a long-term investment. It's like, it feels actually the opposite. If you look at when they changed everything up in March of 2025, when they fired numerous kind of executives just after Carlos Silva came in, and Gail Kim went, and Raphael Morphy, who used to be a live events manager at AEW, he went, and various others who had been fundamental in their kind of building of streaming platforms and aiming towards that TV deal. It was more about a restructure. They brought people in to cover those job roles, and it just felt like because of the change of ultimate, like the top in management with Carlos Silva coming in, and we changed it. This doesn't feel like that. They've now got their head of creative team going forward is not somebody who's actually coming in to the company. It's someone who is already there in a kind of what's the role? Let me just scroll. There we go. So it's a vice president of TV production. Eric Tompkins will now be the head of the creative team. So that does feel like downsizing, and I guess that's what brings around the questions about whether they are preparing for a sale or not, because it's that sort of thing that you see. We're not seeing that investment in kind of any of their infrastructure or any of their creative stuff or even talent. You're not seeing those sort of things that you would see if they were just looking to reinvest the money or the supposed money that they got from this TV deal. Instead, we're seeing streamlining and cutting back and emphasis on what assets do we have, and that feels like sale territory.
Well, this feels very much like we're getting rid of everybody that we're paying or even slightly paying. It very much feels like one of those situations where it's like corporate America. Like we've strip mined it for what it was useful to us in some way, and now it's not useful in that way anymore. So we're selling it for parts. And I know TNA has had some bleak, like different eras of time where it seemed like they were, 1 foot in the grave, but this certainly seems like, more of a danger spot for them than they've had in the last few years. And it's kind of a shame to see it, especially after, like you said, a lot of people put a lot of time and energy into really trying to make them into something in the last couple of years, like an alternative that wasn't WWE, that wasn't AEW. And that's kind of all gone away now. So it's unfortunate for the wrestling industry, given, like you said, there's a real need for people to have that place to learn how to be on TV and grow. And a lot of the discussions that people have had about the independent scene kind of dying out and there not being a place where people can really learn to wrestle like there was for a while. I don't know. It's just really unfortunate. Yeah.
And you're seeing talent being picked up quicker within the WWE ecosystem, within AEW as well. And that will only continue because that's where we talk about the kind of the Cold War and the spheres of influences, that you will take people earlier and earlier and earlier because you don't want the other side getting, a leg up, so to speak. And so they lose kind of that place in the ecosystem. And it's just a case of then what happens next, really. That's the kind of open question. So will they continue to kind of soldier on in whatever this form can be described at, which is, it comes up with, 200K on AMC, every Thursday night, and has less and less impact when it comes to their actual shows in terms of their pay-per-views and that sort of thing. Is that going to be fine? Will they be able to run on that sort of thing? Is a deal with OVW to have them as development just going to fill everything out? It's, just being kind of, I don't know. There's no inventiveness, there's no creativity, there's nothing that's kind of giving them any sort of identity. So is that okay? Is that you're just going to continue with? Okay, maybe you will get away with that. But the likelihood is that at some point, someone's going to ask for more, whether it be your media partners or whether it's going to be, the Anthem who own them. And they also shed jobs this week in Invicta, which is never a great sign, which is the other company under the Anthem umbrella. So it's not a great sign that that's kind of all happening. And I guess the question is where would it go? Because WWE have the first refusal, essentially, when it comes to a sale, which is not that surprising because it's very similar to the deals that they signed in the late 2010s in the UK. So, the independent promotions that became part of the WWE network, the Progresses of these worlds and all those sort of things, they were all, very much a case of they had a deal where WWE could purchase them and they chose not to in those cases. And I guess that's the question here, because it gives you that choice over what happens with them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to pick up that part of the library.
It's going to be interesting to see where we end up. All right, we're going to circle back to the Tommy Dreamer stuff, and this is probably a good point to give a general content warning for today's show, because it's been kind of an extra gross week in wrestling, which means we have extra gross topics to discuss, and we do not shy away from that. We try to put that stuff at the end of the show, but there's just too many topics for us to discover, so there's going to be some general conversation that's going to involve possibly triggering topics like, sexual harassment, sexual assault, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So be warned, and thank you for hanging in there if you're still hanging in there. So Tommy Dreamer is gone from TNA, and the floodgates kind of opened. It started with Dan Perch, who posted on X, Tommy Dreamer pulled me aside backstage at a TNA show, telling me he would do everything he could to make sure I don't earn a job in the wrestling business. All I did was try to learn and grow from experiences, though his words were very discouraging for a young student to hear. I didn't set out to prove him wrong. I simply thanked him for their advice and went another direction. The pro wrestling business is for everybody. You just have to find where you fit in best. Don't perform just for someone else's ideal vision. Perform out of your own passion. And then you had Kennedy Copeland, who tweeted, "Hold up, are we sharing our Tommy Dreamer stories? Because one time I told him I really wanted to take a cane shot in a match, and he told me he doesn't do that with women, so instead we did a spanking spot because women, am I right?" Then we had Danny Jordan, who said, "I've been waiting for this. One time, Tommy Dreamer insisted on doing a crotch grab spot to me in a tag match he was a fill-in for. This had no place in our storyline, but he did not care to ask. I did not want to do this, said how uncomfortable I was, but I'm just a woman, right? I was new in my career and should have trusted my intuition, said a firm no, and not succumb to peer pressure for this spot. This is the only thing that's ever happened in my career that felt degrading, and I vowed never to let a MF try me on some uncomfortable shit ever again." Then we had Carly Bravo, who's currently with AEW. He said that Tommy Dreamer once told him he was very talented, but he couldn't hire him because he didn't know if he could market cocky black guy to the world. And then on top of that, again, there's other stuff, you can find it out there. But on top of that, we did have people who were quick to defend Tommy Dreamer. Mickey James was responded to Perch and expressed skepticism that Perch was telling the full story and saying, "I know Dreamer well enough to know that if he truly said this, there's more to the story that you're leaving out." And then we had the one that really made me lose my fucking mind this morning, which was GCW owner Brett Lauderdale, because I think this shit's so fucking insane. I'm going to read the quote and then I'm going to tell you why I hate this.
Yes.
Okay. This is Brett Lauderdale tweeting, "I think one thing people forget is that Tommy Dreamer is an ECW guy, in quotes, and he comes from a different era. The antics that many consider to be inappropriate or worse today are the very same that made him and ECW so cool and universally celebrated, romanticized in the 90s. I've always known Tommy to be a decent and gracious person. I think his greatest flaw is probably that he didn't evolve with the times, but it's not hard to understand why. Everywhere he goes to this day, people chant ECW, ECW, ECW at him. It's hard to leave that behind. Tommy's always been blunt and honest to a fault and uses language that isn't always thoughtful or sensitive, but he means well, and he's helped advance a lot of people's careers. As for the interaction with Perch, I don't know if it did or did not happen, but the last thing I know Perch to be is a liar." It's also probably worth pointing out here that Lauderdale had a separate tweet where he sort of said Perch was one of the nicest people he knew in wrestling and was very complimentary towards him. So, but yeah, so here's the situation with Tommy Dreamer. And then you had people who were like, "Why is this all coming out now? Why wouldn't people talk about this before he lost his job?" Because he was fucking head of creative, fucking TNA, dipshits, and people want jobs. And they're not going to get jobs from the fucking head of TNA if they tell everybody that he fucking is an asshole. I mean, this is the part that just loses me. Jesus Christ. The stuff that pisses me off about what Lauderdale said, Trish, is that I really hate this, like, well, he's from a different era, and he was praised for this stuff in ECW, and blah, 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 blah. And that's great. That's great if Tommy Dreamer's from a different era where you could say all sorts of nasty things. And here's the thing, right? Even if I'm giving Tommy Dreamer the absolute benefit of the doubt and saying that Tommy Dreamer himself, I'm going to use this one as an example, right? The one where he tells a woman she has to get a boob job because she won't get hired at WWE if she doesn't get her breasts augmented. Even if he doesn't think that himself, even if he personally doesn't think she needs a breast augmentation, the fact that he's happy to go along with the shittier elements of wrestling instead of doing something with his power and his experience and all that other stuff to change it pisses me off, because it's like, what's the impetus to change then? Let's just keep hiring these old creepy guys. And the other thing is, it's not like Tommy Dreamer is a font of really good fucking booking ideas, okay? Nobody's sitting there going, wow, only we really need to get Tommy Dreamer on this. This guy knows how to get heat. Like, fuck you. None of this is particularly interesting wrestling. Nothing he was doing was particularly good. And so instead we have to keep him. He has to keep his job because he was famous fucking 30 years ago. This is the biggest fucking problem with wrestling. It makes me absolutely crazy. It's part of why the industry hasn't changed, is because there's this slavish devotion to a bunch of mediocre mid-card white guys, okay, who don't want to do anything new or interesting, who are happy to just go along with whatever bullshit ideas they can come up with to get fucking heat. And then it's like, okay, well, we can't hire anybody else, right? Like, that one alone really pissed me off. And I appreciate that in the most charitable way possible, that I understand that Brett Lauderdale's trying to thread a very thin needle there, right? We've all, you probably know this, Trish, you and I both work in male-dominated fields. Mm-hmm. You know those old guys. You like them. They're basically nice guys on an individual level. They probably say some shit that you're just like, oh God, right? But the thing is, they shouldn't be fucking in charge of stuff. They shouldn't be heads of organizations. And that's the piece that I lose my mind over, right? I mean, think about it. It goes on like this to this day, right? Billy Gunn, for Christ's sake, still has a fucking job in AEW. What's that guy doing, right? Like, you just look at all these fucking mediocre old guys and you just question what the fuck we're doing. That, like, what are they teaching? Like, what are you learning that, like, you know, we're going to continue to go along with the same bullshit crap that's been going along with since forever, since Vince McMahon decided it. And it just pisses this one really pissed me off this morning. I was fucking irate when I read that.
Because it goes from the top down, doesn't it? And this is where we've always talked about the Vince stuff. It's like, then it gets replicated in every other company, and they think this is how it has to work because this is how it's always worked, and that's the way that's been successful. Not to ever think that there are other ways where things can be successful that don't involve the same 10 booking ideas from the same people from the same part of the industry, because those were the successful years, let alone the fact that we've had other successful years, you know, going forward after that. But no, that's the kind of romanticized era. So those are the people that know how to book wrestling, and those are the people that need to be in charge of, you know, looking after this talent and that talent and this thing. And you're looking at a thing like ECW, which booked women as a side piece attraction, essentially. And you're going to let those people then book women's wrestling and think that they're going to treat it on the same level as their men's wrestling. Of course they're not, right? It's like, that's reality. But yeah, it gets me because there's this thing, and you see it all the time. Oh, he doesn't know any better, or oh, you know, we have to give him the benefit of the doubt. And it's like, no, we don't. Right?
We can give him you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. You want to say he doesn't know anything. Fine. He shouldn't be in charge of a fucking major. Like, you shouldn't be in charge of anything then.
But then you've got stories here that are coming out from independent workers in the US, where it's like, one, you're using the abuse of power because you're threatening to blackball, you know, and that's where they always that seems to be the tendency of where to go to, because the whole thing is, I can control your career, right?
Right.
I control what happens to your career. That's the power they seem to feed off. And then it's that second part of, you know, some of these actions are not like, it's not 1995 anymore. Like, people know better, you know better. And if there was actual like structure in place, and there were things that protected people, gave them the ability to be able to stand up and raise their hand and say, actually, I don't agree with this, rather than having to rely on this kind of you know, hierarchical system that puts these people that were around then as much higher than everybody else. You can't say no to them, because then you're a threat of being kind of disassociated from the entire industry. It's like, then that's when you get things like this. And yeah, you're right. Like, we have people that have been around in our industry for 30, 40 years. And there are times where they'll say something and I'll go, oh, don't report me to HR, basically, right? And it's like, it's such a bollocks sign. You roll your eyes at it. But the only reason that we have it that they can't say everything that they want to say, or they think they should be able to, quote unquote, is the fact that we have a structure, and we have things that, like, disciplinary like actions. If you say things that are just not acceptable, they weren't acceptable then. The fact that we pretended everything was acceptable then, you know, tells us where we are. But that's not where we are now. And you either want wrestling to change or you're not. And every time you say, oh, you know, they don't know any better, or it's always been a carny sport and it always will be, like, what the fuck do you want this to be? Is that what you want this to be forever? You know, you can't say you want everything to be like attracting a more wider base and be something that's welcoming to everyone, and then turn around and go, oh, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's where we're caught in the middle at the moment, because it's like, people just say this stuff. They're just like, oh, it really doesn't matter. And it does fucking matter. And then it's like, you've got a promoter coming out, you know, one of the biggest indie promoters in the US, coming out and saying, oh, he's just part of his era. It's like, he's really been nice to me. And then you're seeing that a lot today, right? We're seeing that with the Mickey James comments on this as well. And it's like, right, it's always like the Tommy I know. And we've seen this year as well, you know, with other things. And that's the thing, is that we also have to deal with the fact that in wrestling, there is this kind of like relationship. It's so funny, isn't it? Like the word parasocial gets abused so much, right? It's always about women, isn't it? Because that's how we have to look at everything. It has to be, they have to be parasocial and not the men that are involved in wrestling. But the way that these relationships work is kind of parasocial in a way, because it doesn't matter what they've done to anybody else. It's about how they treat me. And maybe that's to do with wrestling's kind of trust elements as well. But it very much in that way. So they're willing to overlook those things, or those things can't have happened because of how I've seen them with me, or they have that relationship with me. And that doesn't help either. The fact that people run defense so fucking quickly before anyone says anything else is the reason why people don't raise their hand. It's the reason why people keep their voices quiet until, someone's not in a position of power anymore. And when you've got people coming out and saying, oh, what's it like? Oh, I guess it's cancel Tommy Dreamer weekend now. Like, they never say anything was in power. Well, no fucking shit, because they don't get booked.
Right. Well, and the thing that, again, we see this happen over and over and over again is we're centering how bad it must be for Tommy Dreamer and not thinking about the people throughout his career, or the people, like, for however many years that he's been in charge, that maybe haven't gotten opportunities. For every person that was like, I'm not going to let him get me down, I'm going to show him. How many fucking people quit the industry? How many people went home because they didn't want to have to put up with a guy like Dreamer? Like, it just, that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, we never think about, I don't want to say victims, but like, we never think about the people who are impacted about this. We're always just freaking worried about, like, oh, Tommy Dreamer's a good guy, he didn't really mean it. Like, and let's not even get into the part where it's like, oh, we're going to cancel Tommy Dreamer. When was the last fucking time anybody had consequences for shit like this, right? Tommy Dreamer's not losing his busted open gig. There's still going to be a bunch of fucking guys, like, who are going to be happy to get him a job or to do something, or good old Tommy or whatever. Like, does he deserve it? Is it like, does he do anything interesting, new, or good? No, but let's fucking hang him on payroll because he was fucking famous in ECW. Great. Like, that's, like you said, if you want the industry to change, then shit like this has to change. And like, even if he's the greatest guy on earth and never said anything wrong, why does he deserve a job in wrestling for the rest of his life?
Yeah, because it's boys club. And it's still boys club. And that doesn't mean that there are people trying to make things better and trying to improve things and make things, not just more equal, but just kind of not in that system. But this is the thing, and we'll jump a little bit and come back. But when it comes to the Janelle Grant case, and, that's moving to arbitration, we don't really know the reason as to why she's made the decision not to go to hearing. But that's completely up to her. This thing has been going on for 4 years in the public eye now, essentially, and that's a lot to deal with, a lot to be hounded by, and she has to make the right decisions for her, because at the end of the day, like, her case has highlighted the abuse of power within the top of that company that we all were aware of to some extent, but has highlighted more. However, it's not up to her to lead to change in this industry. The idea, you'd hope that there would have been some repercussion that would make people feel safer in the workplace, that would establish kind of more whistleblowing sort of effectively if you can't go to the people in management because of potential abuses of power there. That would mean that there would just be something that would actually make it so these were more effective workplaces and modernize in the way that other industries have, who were also considered a carny. And we've not seen that. And when you don't see that at the very top, what happens is that cascades down, right? And, that's what we're seeing. And then we have a case at the weekend with a European company over in Austria.
Yeah, this is disgusting.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Rings of Europe, which is based out of Austria.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a show this past weekend, and wrestling star Diana Strong accused the promotion of displaying a large image of a topless woman with Diana's face photoshopped onto it without her consent. Yes. So this is her, she wrote about it in Instagram. Apparently, she says that Dirty Diana was written on the picture. She says the picture was shown to people backstage before it was left in the men's locker room. And that the explanation she was given is that it was created for a storyline reason, but she'd never heard anything about it. She'd never agreed to any type of her likeness like this being used. And this is on top of another accusation that a woman wrestler made, Violet Knight, shared on Instagram, that they attempted to shame her for pulling out of an event because she was sick. She said that they posted an image of her on social media that were calling on fans to cancel her and accused her of unprofessionalism and shared her real name. And then on Saturday, Rings of Europe canceled a scheduling show and said on Facebook that the majority of the wrestlers decided not to perform. It does appear that this is because of the situation that happened with Diana Strong, that the other wrestlers were like, we're not going to continue. Don't be gross, basically.
Between the two situations.
Yeah.
Like one wasn't bad enough. We had to have two. Like, oh my God. And this is the thing. This is where we said it bleeds all the way down, right? So, and especially in places where there are less eyes on them, and mainland Europe, there's absolutely less eyes on.
No, there's nobody paying attention.
Companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's and this is a company that has booked Marty Skull versus JJ Gale a couple of years ago, which got Gale some heat with a pro. It's a company that other wrestlers are coming out, like Alexis Lee, who's a Singaporean wrestler, who've come out and said that they wanted to change her name because there was another Alexis booked on the show, and suggested kind of frankly kind of racist style Chinese naming. It's just like it's interesting, isn't it? In a way, it's not interesting, that's the wrong word, but the sexism and racism seem to come together a lot of the times in these stories.
Yep.
But so here's a promotion that the stories that you're getting from a number of their talent is they view women as lesser than. The way they present women is lesser than.
Yep.
They don't write, oh, they write, and it's language is such an interesting thing because people think it's like not important, but they'll write out all these men's matches and it'll just be ladies 4x4, and ladies is a term that there's a reason it's not called ladies football anymore and it's called women's football, because it's considered you make you lesser than. You're not on the same level. That's the presentation. It's little things with language that just says that you're not a priority. And essentially there is a lot, I think, in Europe still, talking to some independent wrestlers today, of still feeling like they're tokens on these shows, that are still there so they can have, we have a women's match. It's not seen as you're a wrestler. And that's not just a women's wrestling problem. That's something that's happening across sport. God, I only have to turn the World Cup on and see Emma Hayes be the best kind of pundit on ITV. Well, our football, US women's national team soccer manager or football manager, get told off for saying soccer first one. They were going to shout at me. And see the abuse that she's taking for being better, frankly, than anyone else at a job, because she's considered, she's a woman's manager. She's not a football manager, even though she's the most successful English football manager in the last 20 years. And it's that sort of thing. That's what we see in wrestling. So it's like, we just have this and that. But actually, we don't care about them. And then there's other stories that we've seen where they've been asked to do something and they've been uncomfortable. And then they've kind of been ostracized by the promoter. And it's like, there is no way out of it. You either get booked or you don't. And there's not that many companies. So you're left in a position then as a female talent, especially in Europe, mainland Europe. And I'm sure there's plenty of other places around the world in a similar situation, where if you want to turn this into something more than just kind of a weekend hobby, like, you need these bookings, and like the only places open to you are very much not places that you can be comfortable with. And there are a few windows of places that have that open environment that people feel comfortable in, but unfortunately there are still these places, and there are still many of them. And we're talking top all the way down. There are these people in positions of power who will either abuse it or have this attitude towards women. And it's just this, it feels like it's not the sort of week we want to do with it. We don't want to talk about all this stuff all week. There's nothing worse than having to talk about wrestling and then having to talk about this kind of imbalance that we've got. But the fact that it keeps happening over and over and over and over again, and it makes you get to the point where you think, how the fuck is anyone going to actually get the message? How long is this going to take? And that doesn't mean we stop pushing it. It doesn't mean we stop, reporting on these things or talking about these things, because that's the only way you're going to fucking get somewhere. Because who else is going to fucking do it? This should be a major scandal story.
Huge. It should be fucking huge. The Tommy Dreamer stuff should be fucking huge. He should be off Busted Open.
And what will happen?
Should be off him. No, of course not. He's
a Busted Open going to make made a statement. He's not on there today, but he was on there yesterday. They're going to make a statement. We're going to investigate. We're going to talk about this. The people that put their money into Busted Open, is that company going to make a statement?
No,
of course they're not. So we're now in a situation where it's just like, these are there, and everything continues.
Right. And assholes will bitch about cancellation like it's something that has actual consequences for people.
Yeah. When actually the people that things have consequences for are the people that are having to put things out, and they can only do so once those kind of people in power are gone, or if everyone is able to group together. And that's really fucking hard in wrestling, because there is that singularity thing where you may think that everyone's kind of with you, but often you'll find that they're not, because they want that, as we spoke about previously, they want that next part, they want that booking, they want that sort of thing. So there isn't that collective kind of feeling. So when you get something like what happened in Ring of Europe, where everyone decides, actually, we're not going to work this show, that's a rarity. And that tells you like how bad it must fucking be that they cancelled a fucking show, because that stuff just doesn't happen. And maybe it needs to happen more. Maybe it's like, but this is a sea change that we need to see over time. But it's like, it's just so frustrating. I just feel like sometimes I just want to go and stick my head in a freezer and scream, because it just goes round in circle after circle after circle. And any time that like you push for kind of even a little bit of improvement, it's like there's such a pushback. And I think that's not, again, that's like a general society feeling at the moment, I guess, as well. But yeah, these are just, there's just a lot going on at the moment that will not be treated with the importance that it should be. And some of that, I think, comes from, the way that from the very top with, with the Grant case, and the way that they've kind of been swept under the rug after a couple of years and moved on from. Like, people hear these things, they engage with it maybe, and then they use it for their tribal warfare, and they just move on. And that just feels like how things are at the moment. And we don't feel like there's actually a willingness to want change outside of a few kind of people in the industry. And
well, the problem you also have is the wrestling media is also so deeply embedded with a lot of these guys that have been fucking around forever, right? And it's like, well, who's gonna rock the boat that and actually do, is there anybody doing this kind of investigative journalism in wrestling anymore? Very few people who are actually fucking paid for it, right? Yeah. So who's going to come out? Again, you've busted open as one of the biggest platforms for wrestling. No, if they're not going to do anything about it, like, you'll have people who maybe like put out an article on it, but nobody's going to really fucking investigate it or talk to people or try to get people on the record. There's no human resources that's going to engage with it. He's going to just disappear into whatever promotion he goes to next, and that'll be the end of it. Like, that's the part that I think, gets really fucking depressing, right? Is it's a bunch of the same old white guys across platforms, across whatever. Like, Dave LaGreca's sure not going to look into this shit. Like, that's not what they do. And there's that, we don't expect them to do it. We don't hold them to that standard. We're not trying to get them to, like, cover these things, right? It's post and that's it. No. It's just, it's depressing as fuck.
Yeah, but we have to cover it.
We will always fucking cover it.
And I'm working on some follow-up stuff on the Ring of Europe case, because I think that it's too easy to go under the radar just because you're over this side of the pond, to be honest. And it shouldn't be. But there's no quick fix. No. Because eradicating so many of these people is going to take a long time. But we have to try, because should be no reason that there should be a difference between anyone who wants to come into this industry, be it male or female, and the way they're treated and the way they're booked and the way they're presented, just because of their sexuality. It's just, we have to move forward. The rest of the world is moving forward in so many ways, and there is pushback, but so many industries have changed so rapidly in the last 20, 30 years. And that's not to say wrestling hasn't moved forward, but like, you're running at a snail's pace where everyone else is running marathons, yeah. It's just, but yeah, just sucks. It just sucks. Yeah.
All right. We get to go to another depressing topic, Trish. Sorry, everybody.
Oh, we're not.
Yeah, so as we did just sort of a quick note on this, we did discuss it kind of above. There's not really too much to say about this, but Janelle Grant's sex trafficking lawsuit against Vince McMahon has not settled, but the parties have agreed to resolve it in arbitration. Okay. It doesn't mean that it means there's likely a settlement coming. It has not happened yet, but that's ultimately what the situation is. And until that's reached, and if maybe there's a press release about it, we're not likely to know anything further.
No, it just means that it goes completely silent now in terms of public. There was a kind of a dollage of information just before. It included kind of people kind of their belief being that, like, Nick Khan was the person that leaked it to the Wall Street Journal, which is quite an interesting development, because when you look at what they were given, it would have to come from someone inside, was often been a belief. But yeah, it just goes behind a thing. One thing that did frustrate me is, did you see the Front Office Sports article?
Yeah, that was fucking unbelievable.
Again, which was another one. Obviously, they are co-opted with WWE in that long-term deal now, who are just kind of like, Vince McMahon clears up another lawsuit sort of thing. And the phrasing and the way that was presented, with quotes that came from sources that were, you could look. It was very much a co-opted piece presenting as not. And that's the sort of thing that we're probably going to see more of. But it very much helped to, they're publicly try to distance themselves in terms of WWE and TKO from this case. But yeah, so it'll go to arbitration. We won't hear anything probably more publicly about it now. And that's where we are. And it was always going to go one way or another. It was either going to go to a settlement or go to arbitration, potentially, because it's a civil lawsuit. It's not a criminal lawsuit. So
right, and any criminal investigation ended with the 2024 election. So
yes, so we knew that was a thing. But yeah, so hopefully, for the Janelle Grant, for the victim's perspective, hopefully that she can find some peace in her life at some point. Because I couldn't even imagine what it is like to endure all this for so long. And that's really it, isn't it? You just wish the best for the victim, because there's nothing really else that's going to come of it at this point. But yeah, I wish her the best going forward.
Yeah.
All right. It feels like a real culture clash to then move on to like normal wrestling things, but such is the nature sometimes of when we do, you don't really get a choice.
No, but I think for us, prioritizing it at the beginning was, kind of important. Yeah, it had to be this week. So, we are going to jump in a really weird way, but it's what it is, across to kind of awkward transition, as opposed to our excellent transitions that we've had over the many years.
This is not
a fun transition. This is just a weird transition to the more fluffy side of wrestling.
Yeah. We'll move across to so a lot of people want us to talk about Forbidden Door, which, and kind of all the kind of stuff around it. And I have to say, like, I hate talking about Forbidden Door.
It's
as you know, like every year I'm like, there's part of me that's just like, I would like this period of time to be over with, because it drives me up the fucking wall. Because we do exactly the same cycle, right? We do the cycle where like it's not very Forbidden Door, or it's not the matches that we want, because obviously you've got to detail the politics involved and stuff. Right. And then in most recent years, it's like it's not very, there isn't very
much
many
of a door.
There's not much of a door. It's more of an oval at this point. So we go through the same cycle, the same talking points, and then this year we've added kind of the IWGP talking point as well. With Yoda Tsuji picking the belt back up as expected. Dominion. I should probably throw a plug in, if you do want to hear me review Dominion in full. I joined Jeremy and Josh for Keeping It Strong Style last week, so you can catch that on the network. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of fun. Got to shout about Jake Lee a bit, so that was fun. So he picked that belt back up. It's a little bit shorter match than they planned. I think Alvarez reported that Newman had injured his shoulder, which is the same thing we're aware of. And that was, so it was always the plan finish. They were always going back to Tsuji. Newman got the kind of midsummer run that they like to do, like a test run. So they like to elevate someone up in there. It's like the least pressure situation around Dontaku, and then you lose it to Dominion to give like the babyface a big win, especially this time because it's like their second TV spot of the year ahead of their takeover, share takeover, stock takeover, whatever you want to call it, of TV Asahi and Cyberfight going to equal partners share wise, but then run as a subsidiary to TV Asahi from 30th of June. So and the thing is like, so Tsuji basically got the belt back and then decided that, like, well, what was decided for him? He went to Tokyo Sports and he reiterated exactly the same thing he did at the start of the year.
Yes, it was. He said this. He said exactly this. This was not a new thing from Tsuji, which is why it was kind of funny that it got way more reaction than it did the last time he said it. Because I was like, yeah, he said it last time, but maybe I just pay attention because you pay attention.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, he literally said like, I won't be defending the belt at Forbidden Door. He used the word boycott, which was like the touch paper, I think. And he said, unless this title is in the main event, like, we don't defend it, and we don't defend it against outsiders. And that was exactly what they said back in January. And I do think it's kind of funny, like, that people believe that this is just him saying this. Yeah. Like, they are absolutely trying to kind of rebuild these belts, right? So you've got this belt that you've brought back the version 4 version of it because the other one was fucking cursed, quite frankly. But something that you devalued massively over the last 5 years. So, you know, he talked about Forbidden Door and the fact that they did a 4-way, you know, first ever time it had been defended in a 4-way in 2022. Obviously, they had Sonata defending against Jack Perry in the middle of the card in like equivalent to a AEW mid card belt match in 2023. You know, 2024, where was that one? I've been to all these. How do I not even remember?
It was the one with Naito and
oh god,
Moxley.
we were there, right? We were there.
Yes.
Okay, so that one was the one that was supposed to, you know, part of the deal from according to New Japan side was that was the main event, and then it got changed, and you can see why, you know, in terms of from an AEW perspective. But that's what it was, and that was the whole weird one, right? Because that's the one where Moxley was supposed to be like the AEW guy, and he was running around in a New Japan tracksuit.
Yep.
And then last year, obviously,
belt.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Weird belt.
And then you had last year where the belt was defended against a retired commentator coming out, you know, which was one of Zach's dream matches, but was a mid card again. You know, it was lower in the card than Swerve and Okada for the was it international, continental? Which one did he have then? He had both. I lose track of which belts and which in the mid card. Yeah, one of them. It was below that one. Obviously, it was below the AEW World Title match, and then they had the cage match across the show. So he's talked about that, but he's also talking about, and this is what I think has gone over the head because people just went off the aggregated quotes, including the wrestler that reacted to it. And it's like, it's not just about AEW. It's about the fact that this belt has been like mistreated for the last 5 years, like in totality. So we've had it in semi-main events. It's been won in semi-main events. It's been lost in semi-main events, right? That's not a drawing belt. You're just saying that's the same as any other title. If you're putting another match above it, then like it's worthless. And it's like, so you've been doing that. You've also been doing things where you're putting it on shows as semi-main event and then putting like the talent that would be like who are in AEW that used to work for New Japan on strong shows are being presented as higher than your own talent. And that does fuck all for anybody, right? And this is the point. This is the point behind what they're doing with the belt, and it's the point behind what Suji's saying. And some of it's like a mini feud with Goto as well, and it's all that built in. And I guess if you don't really follow, you'll kind of miss the creative because it's like you don't need to see it, right? But it's like, if you're going to reestablish New Japan and these wrestlers as stars on their own, right? Stars on their own that could then come across and compete on the level in, you know, AEW when it comes to Forbidden Doors and those sort of things, if you believe that like they have nothing to offer them currently, the only way you're going to do that is to present these as real fucking important people. And that means not sending them over to defend like the belt in like a mid-card situation against someone no one cares about, or putting them on semi-main events in shows and then putting AEW people upon them on strong shows. That's why the reason that you've got New Japan shows in the US this year are New Japan shows. You know, you have the G1 show coming up and it's all New Japan talent, you know, including the 2 dual contracted, and that's it. You did the show, the New Beginning show in Trenton, New Jersey. Same thing. It's not New Japan strong anymore. It's not, we need the 15th fucking reformation of the Bullet Club or anything like that. We don't need to be putting the fucking heavyweight belt on a guy from AEW and thinking that that's going to solve everything when we actually take away from a money drawing run that it was at the start of that year. Like, none of these things have helped. All of these things have been detrimental. And that's not to take away from the fact that Gato, you know, has really struggled to put people forward. You know, you can pick out mistake after mistake after mistake from the Ibushi reign ending, you know, into the start of the Ospreay thing. And then he goes home, and then whatever happened with Jay White, like, you can layer all these things out, and even to Suji not being Sonata when he came back, like, whatever it is that you want to lay out, and you fail your shot, fine. But it's like, you have to start unraveling those somewhere. You have to change this stuff. And the only way you're going to fucking do it is you actually say these things are important and these wrestlers are important and we're presenting them as ours. If you want to come and see New Japan Pro Wrestling, you come and see New Japan Pro Wrestling. Like, you want to see that belt defended. That's something that used to be fucking special. Like, you didn't just go and see that belt defended fucking anywhere. Like, I remember the first time it was defended in the UK at Royal Quest in 2019, and it felt really fucking special because this was the IWGP belt. It's a really fucking important belt. Like, and then it didn't, and it became less and less. And it's like, this is what they're saying. So when you see these interviews and you see Suji doing these interviews, he's talking about two things. He's talking about reestablishing New Japan as a force in itself, which also plays into stuff, you know, they're doing the anti-New Japan pro AEW stuff with Gabe Kidd, and I imagine there's a match between them in the autumn. I think they're building there. I think that makes sense. But it's like, so you've got that in one part, and then it's like also it's like you have to start again. And with this new company, you know, kind of ownership coming on board as well, it's like if they want to expand internationally, you don't get to do that by being the little guy. You don't get to do that by being the guy that's just like, oh, we're a feeder system. So you have to change that. And there's two ways of doing it. You know, you need to make everything more important. And secondly, you know, you need to make the conditions better. And that includes pay in order so people don't feel the need to leave. And that also includes lengthier contracts, which is something they have addressed this year. We're going to the 3-year model. So it's like, that's what you have to do. And it's very easy to talk about it being all about AEW, but most of it's got fuck all to do with AEW in that regard, other than trying to keep talent for a bit longer. So it's one of those quotes that like wouldn't get picked up any other time of the year. It's like when Naito did it, right? And you can remember that Tsuji has that Naito mannerism and uses similar things because that's what he learned under. That's who he is. And it's the same way, like God, can you imagine if half of Naito's shit to Tokyo Sports Guy would get picked up by AEW aggregators? I'd never fucking sleep like the last 5 years. I wouldn't sleep, would I? But then, yeah, so obviously he puts them quotes out, the aggregators pick him up, and then Will Ospreay on his wedding day.
Listen, you got a lot of downtime between the ceremony and the pictures. You're just sitting there looking at your phone, like you know what I mean. She's got to get ready. Like you're just hanging out in the hotel room until 2:00, waiting for the ceremony to start. Why not fucking go on Twitter?
Yeah, it's a choice. It's a choice. But you know, he's like, oh, have some pride in representing your company as a top lad. You know, when I had an IWGP championship, I wanted to travel the world, calling out the best, show them all New Japan is the better company. And it's just like, oh, and he's like, you know, it screams to me that he's insecure, and then starts talking in. He starts then arguing with, you know, New Japan, some of the New Japan fans or things like that, and it's like, you know, like Dave Meltzer does with Zero Egg. Replies on Twitter, and like he's arguing in the same way, and he's talking about, you know, we've sent this person and that person, and we've sent this person, you know, back to New Japan, and we give them the top 100% of talent. It's not about us stealing talent, and you know, and I just looked at it and I thought, one, I hate the word "we've given" because I've heard that one before and I've challenged that one. It's like what you have to understand is whether you think like New Japan, you know, needs help or not, or in their current position, and everyone knows, you know, where their struggles have been in recent years. Like, I think that that's a misjudgment as well, because at the end of the day, like John Moxley going to New Japan for that title run wasn't done to help New Japan primarily. Like they agreed to it and they thought it would help, you know, for a short boost, but it was done to keep Moxley happy.
Happy, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you know, people that went for other shows, you know, like Kenny Omega going back there, you know, these guys have always had that in their contract, you know, like he's not going back just to, you know, throw a bone to New Japan. He didn't give his like return match to New Japan to throw him a bone. You know, that's what he wanted to do. The Bucks got so much out of that. You see how much they rejuvenated when they, you know, from that Wrestle Dynasty, like, and then the New Beginning Osaka run. It's like, some of these talent are going there because they want to go there. You know, Ospreay himself like wants to go there, and it's like they're being compensated. You know, to the point where at Wrestle Dynasty there were frustrations from New Japan kind of wrestlers over the fact that they were being compensated so well compared to them. So it's like it's not like you were given, you know. And but what do you think about the fact that Tsuji is probably missing Forbidden Door? Before we start into other things.
I mean, at this point with Forbidden Door, you know, one of the positives, one of the wonderful things about AEW is that you do have people from other promotions that'll just show up out of nowhere and have a couple matches, and that's great about it, right? That's what everybody wanted, and I don't think there's a complaint about that in that regard. But that means that the overall Forbidden Door thing, once you got past like 2023, it kind of disappears a little bit. Like the emphasis of it, the impact of it kind of goes away. Whereas you got Mystico on a random rampage on a Friday night in Texas, right? So because of that, I think they'd be better served like holding off on this pay-per-view every once in a while, right? Like I'm not saying that they have to like cancel it permanently, but it's a bit like All In Wembley. Why are you doing this every year? Like, why are you running this shit into the ground? And I think one of the challenges, like you said, the narrative's always the same, right? The build for Forbidden Door is not that great. It almost never is. And you end up with a couple of really good matches that hopefully people remember, and that's your best, it's not World's End, like, I guess let me put it that way, but it's not one of your standout pay-per-views in terms of build. And so you have a couple good matches and then people come back and they're like, you said it wasn't going to be good, and it was good. Like, I'm sure they're going to have some fucking kick-ass matches on this show, but it's like, what is it doing for you if you're calling it Forbidden Door and the idea is this crossover, and the reality is that it's not, right? And I have no issue with Tsuji calling out the fact, like, if they, like, New Japan, and this is what I would say about this, like, because you said the thing about John Moxley and like it was done for AEW's benefit. I have no problem with that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, if New Japan Pro Wrestling is in a stronger dominant position with AEW, they'd probably do similar things. Like, I'm not saying like these are not shady things. This is, hey, I have a business to run. This might help me. How do you think about this? But New Japan has the option of saying, like you said, they have the option of saying no on some of this shit, and this year they have.
It's like, it's not even that to me. It's not like the idea that like, they were forced into a John Moxley title ring, because that's not how it worked.
Absolutely
but it's that idea that they were just, you have to be given everything. Like,
they should be grateful.
They should be grateful. Yeah, because that's the kind of emphasis to that tweet. It was just like, they should be grateful for what they're given, sort of thing. And it's like, yeah, but that works both ways. Like,
right. If you have a partnership, it goes both ways. They get some stuff sometimes, and AEW gets some stuff sometimes. Yeah. And if New Japan is focused on making this belt a big fucking deal again and bringing the prestige back, then it makes absolute sense that they wouldn't send their number one belt to another show to be to have it done. I mean, I'm going to say this: did they Wrestle Dynasty? Did the AEW title get defended on Wrestle Dynasty?
No, he was busy being Hamburglar with the Rock and Roll Express in pre-tapes. Right.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not like, we sent that over, so which is, again, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. It's not like they're not sending a belt. Shota's going to defend the global title.
Which is his fucking point. That's his whole point.
The whole point of that title.
That's what he said back in January. And that's what Shota's just gone and said as well, because that's the point, right? And that's where this is the thing. It's like when you read it and you're reading, right, this is one guy saying the same thing and another guy saying the same thing. And then you have to start working out, like, this is the direction. This is not people shooting or going off into their own thing. This is the direction of these belts. They have a clear identity. This is the one we defend against outsiders around the world. This is the one that we defend in Japan, or if we do defend it somewhere else, it's in the main event and, with contracted talent, because that's the only way that we're going to have our own identity other than being AEW's feeder. But it's like, but it made me laugh because it was like, yeah, there was that thing, right? So it's like, if you say like, oh, they're not bringing everything they should be to AEW, and it's like, well, Wrestle Dynasty, if Kenny Omega wasn't on that card, it does under 10K easily. Oh. Like, we could see it. Like, we could see it there. And I think for me, it was like a real kind of wake-up call to the lack of footfall that AEW has there. They don't have this huge footfall and kind of like wide kind of appeal in Japan. And they're happy. It doesn't mean that you don't use the ex New Japan talent that work in AEW. Like, New Japan can bring them in, and some have a visible effect on numbers, and some don't. But it's like they still have access to them, and they can use that, and that's good for them. They'll look at using probably Finlay next year, probably JY next year. But it's like, as a viable thing of their own, like, there's no attraction there. There isn't the attraction that you would think you was, and thus, Wrestle Dynasty doesn't exist again because it lost a load of money. As in they put in their Bushiroad things, and that's the thing. So I think with this one, it's like Forbidden Door has been a really successful pay-per-view over the years.
Yes, yes.
Last year did 18K in London. One of the biggest arena shows they've ever done. I think that is the biggest arena show they've ever done, isn't it? Because the other ones have been stadiums, if you count like Grand Slam and. So
also likely helped by the fact that people knew it was going to be Tanahashi's last international match too.
Maybe I think part of it. I just think it was just it was in London. Obviously, there was no Wembley. I think that part played as well. But also, I think Forbidden Door as the brand has been really strong because even like when people complained like the first year, obviously we had like 17K in Chicago, and the car maybe wasn't what people thought it was. It was a fantastic show. It's probably the best. I think that's probably the best show with the lowest expectation going in that they've ever run.
Yes,
was that first Forbidden Door show? Because even just like the tags on it were fantastic, and you had like that Forbidden Door element all the way through, right? From the beginning of the card to the end of the cards. So you almost set an expectation with that you can do this show. You can generate, I don't think you did 145k, which was more actually than All Out that year with the Forgotten Now, because everything that followed after Punk and Moxley match. So it's like you knew it could draw with using that and that thing. But then as you move so much of that talent either retire or leave or move to AEW, it's like there's less and less reliance on it. And then it becomes a point where, because this is in the build to All In, it's like, I think Rich raised it on One Nation Radio, and I was speaking to people about it this weekend, is, do you find that it's disruptive? Because all of a sudden the build moves away, and not everything does. You've got the 12-man cage match at the top of this card, might not close, but it's being presented as the main event. You've got the Owen final on the men's side between Strickland and Ospreay, and you've got the women's Owen between Mercedes and Maya World. Obviously, none of them are Forbidden Door style matches. And then underneath that, you've got John Moxley Bandido, which is a non-interpromotional match either, and Adam Copeland and Christian Cage defending the tags against the Dogs, which is quite funny because that's Finley's first appearance on Forbidden Door. He's been signed. So it's a weird one. So you can say like it's disruptive and it feels like it's like a change of pace and the build's not great. But most of the programs at the very top of this are all interpromotional with the or non-interpromotional, with the exception of Tekla, a Starlight Kid, and she's probably making the most effort, it feels like, to make something out of these kind of programs.
This podcast is sponsored by Pocket Hose.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn. Homeowners, listen up. Before Pocket Hose, garden hoses were heavy, bulky, hard to carry, and always kinking. Then Pocket Hose changed all that. It's the American invention that made watering lighter, easier, and smarter. And now, the world's #1 expanding hose has gone ballistic. Turn on the water and watch it grow from a compact hose into a full-length, powerful hose. Turn off the water and it shrinks right back down, making it easy to carry and easy to store. But now it's even better. With a tough ballistic-infused outer sleeve, a pocket pivot that helps reduce kinks at the spigot, thicker washers to help resist leaks, and UV protection to fight sun damage. And for a limited time, you'll get 2 free gifts: a 360-degree pocket pivot and a thumb drive nozzle. Just go to PocketHose.com/podcast. That's PocketHose.com/podcast for your 2 free gifts with purchase. PocketHose.com/PODCAST.
But yeah, so it's still been a strong brand for them, but they've moved away from that element. I always say, like, you have to look at this. This is an AEW show, right? It's an AEW show with talent from other places. But as we include more of those talent, and especially with the dual contracted talent, like, Takeshita, also from the other side, like Mystico and Masco Dorada, as they're included in more and more other pay-per-views, you're right, it just becomes like a norm. So then when you do something like this, people want to see more. And they want to see the people that maybe are exciting because they're coming through, like the Knockout Brothers, who can't do it. I put it in our Discord, I was like, I am reporting because I thought it was funny, but no, they can't do it because of visa issues. They were pitched for a match, the visas don't come in time. Obviously there is some issues with that, but there are other people that have worked recently in the US that aren't here. Say Kamatani, biggest star in Stardom, isn't here. Main title holder in Stardom, Suzu Suzuki, picked up this week, also not going to be there. Mystico is wrestling in probably the most interesting kind of interpromotional match on the card, the freeway tag with the Bucks, Mystico, Masco Dorada, and Shingo and Titan. But I guess people expected him to be doing something more because of the level of star power that he's presented in, and the level that he's been presented in at times in AEW as well. So you would think that you would do more of that, and that's not happening. So you get this kind of contradiction between thinking it's like a poor buildage like show each year, but actually, the last couple of years have been built within the AEW realm for the most part at the very top of the card, and yet it still doesn't. It feels a little bit disjointed all around, which probably says something to something else. But yeah, it is what it is at this point. These days I just hope we get some kind of good undercard tags. And that's
it's one of those things that I guess, obviously you have the 3-way tag match, which will be good, but you do wish that they would do more. Like, part of what made the first 2 Forbidden Doors more fun is that you did have a lot of those people in tag matches, and it seems like that's kind of disappeared. And that gives you the opportunity for some of those weird and messed up pairings, like we had in the first Forbidden Door, and it's kind of a bummer they don't do that anymore. And I get it, but it's less fun.
Yeah, it's an I think it's a concept that probably doesn't work in the run up to a big Wembley show when you're doing that.
Right.
Because you maybe take more risks if it's in a different place. Maybe put it where Wrestle Dream is, sort of thing. Because if
Yeah.
you put it in like that full area, like that's less kind of consequential for New Japan. No one's going to care about, I don't know, destruction in Kobe or something like that in the same level that they are Dominion and run up to the G1, right?
Right.
So, and it's the same, for a lot of other companies as well. So maybe that would be a solution of making it more of a B pay-per-view than an A pay-per-view, but it's all of the different challenges that they face around trying to, keeping pay-per-view numbers up and that. Just a little bit of focus on a couple of topics around this that for us to talk about. Firstly, what do you think of the women's Owen this year? And obviously the final being Mercedes Moné and Maya World.
I think it's interesting. I think putting Maya World in the unexpectedly in this, it's kind of given him a bit of a shot of the arm. It gives a new talent an opportunity to get promo time, and people get to know her. And I think I like her a lot. It's also clear that the Owen has just gotten bitten by injuries.
Yeah, they've had a lot of problems on that side.
Yeah. So it's kind of tough though, because I do feel like we're sort of back at that. If it's not for a championship or a tournament, like there's not really anything going on in the women's division. And Tekla's just fucking, that girl's doing everything she can, but it's tough when she's out there by herself. So I don't know.
She literally has tried to do everything with this build, flying over Japan for the conversion show at Stardom to, attack. And then trying to do the promos here. And she's really not had much to kind of chew off since the Statlander thing finished. And it's just an interesting one because you should have run with her really into Wembley. And then you get that question of, obviously, Mercedes wasn't originally planned for this. And, from her story perspective, you would feel that, to me, it feels too soon for her to win the belt because you're telling a story like that she needs, in a way, it's like she needs that babyface term, like that kind of to deal with everything that's happened. And because that failure eating her has been like a constant part of her story. And then if you rush this and you go straight into it now, I don't know, it just feels like it's not as, it doesn't feel like it has the payoff that it should do or the build up to the payoff that it should do. But at the same time, you're like with Tony out and the way that they don't focus on other women when Tony or Mercedes aren't available, as we've seen quite frequently over the last few months, it's then a case of if you don't put Mercedes in there, like who are they put, if they put My World in there, it's like, will they treat it as important as they should? Or do they feel they need Mercedes in there because it's one of their two stars from that division?
I think they have to put Mercedes in there. The question is whether or not she wins or loses. I'd have her lose to Tekla.
Yeah.
I think it would make most sense creatively and give her a real something to work on for the next year. But, is she going to get the time? Like even Mercedes going to get the time. And, I would not have her win the Owen this year. I think that, I don't want to say mistake, because I don't think you can ever say these things are going to be a mistake if you haven't seen it yet. But I think it's more interesting. The same way I thought it would have been more interesting if Okada had lost to Kenny last year. Like, I think the more interesting choice is to have Mercedes lose here.
And we often see that, like, when people are in that position and then they're going towards something. That's probably where AEW storytelling is the strongest. Whereas when they get that payoff, the lack of follow up, is often a problem. Like even if you look at coming out for Double or Nothing, like you look at some of the things coming out of there. Like Takeshita got his big win over Okada, and what? That's it. The kind of thing, Okada's not really changed.
Nope.
Yeah, he's still stood in the same position that he was, and Don Callis family. There's no reaction to it really. He then just becomes, this background. They've both become background casts to this cage match thing, rather than anything kind of moving on. And then you've got like the Kevin Knight heel turn that's now been absorbed into the Don Callis family, and similar thing. So there is that danger of that. So that in a way, it almost feels like you want to elongate the kind of movement towards the belt and her changing that character and it becoming more of a general thing, because that's the sort of thing that seems to get more over in this company and seems to sustain from a booking perspective better than if you just win it and then you try and tell a story afterwards.
I agree.
Do you want to discuss the men's Owen, or do you want to discuss the Kenny question we got first?
Let's do the Kenny question first.
You want to do the Kenny question?
This was from Right Said Nick on Blue Sky, who said, "I'm sure the match will be great, but the booking of Omega is just baffling, especially if he's going to win the title and main event all in." Trish, Sarah, would love to get your takes on the next pod as to why this happens, ? He's one of their top draws, stars. Surely it's strange. Yeah, this is some weird shit. The whole build to this has been weird. This whole thing has been weird. Kenny disappearing and then coming back and disappearing and coming back and getting stretchered out and coming back and giving weird promos and coming back. And, I will agree with my Tunnel Talk friends here. Part of it, I think I appreciate creative is what it is. And that, you sometimes you have to do what you have to do. But I also think Kenny kind of feels like he's been phoning it in a lot lately. At least in the last year, it doesn't feel like he's been really committed or invested in anything. And I was kind of like, oh, great, the Young Bucks are out there with him again. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like there's any kind of urgency about this at all. I think that, he and Ospreay had that great promo, and then he just disappeared. And it's like, oh, now he's back and he's going to fight Zack Sabre Jr. And the promo he gave on Wednesday was confusing at best. Like, why? Like, and that's the thing where I'm just kind of like, it's like, if you don't know Zack Sabre, we all know who Zack Sabre Jr. is. He's the only guy we see every fucking year on these shows. He's been on every Forbidden Door. He's been,
and he wins.
And wins every Forbidden Door. Like, why wouldn't you bring that up? Why wouldn't you
talk
about how
Zack... thing? That's the whole fucking point of it being him.
Right. Why wouldn't you talk about that? Why wouldn't you say, hey, Zack Sabre Jr. wins all these things, and you look at all the people, bring up the people he's beaten, right? Yeah. And instead it's like, no, it's like, you have something I want. What does he have that you want? A title win. I'm basically just reading off a transcript from Tunnel Talk this week, but I agreed with them 100% on this. From a storytelling standpoint, it was baffling. And I just don't get it. Like, I think it's hard to look at this and go, like, Darby Allin's reign was so wonderful, right? That it's hard to say, well, why wouldn't you just give the belt to Kenny at Dynasty, right? Like, because that's part of what I want to say. But that the trade-off of that is giving up Darby Allin's title run, which was fantastic, right? But like, then why not just have Kenny beat Darby Allin? Like, why couldn't you tell that story? You couldn't tell those stories together, where it's like Darby Allin is like slowly falling apart and getting more and more injured as Kenny is getting his strength back and feeling invigorated. Like, wouldn't that be a fucking spectacular, like, parallel narrative to go through? Like, no, instead MJF just going to beat him. I don't know. The whole thing is just fucking weird. And it's like the build to All In right now just doesn't seem to have a lot of urgency to it. And I think that's true for the Ospreay stuff, and it's true for the Kenny stuff. And so it's like, on the one hand, I was like, the idea of Ospreay and Kenny main eventing All In is really exciting. Like, those guys fucking have phenomenal matches. The segments they've done together are spectacular, but it's not working for me right now. And I'm kind of like, let's see what happens. It's not done yet. I'm not going to get pretty mad, but like, what I'm seeing on TV on a regular basis isn't filling me with a level of excitement that I was having this year.
Yeah, so with Kenny and Zack, like, Zack makes all the sense in the world on paper to be this person, right? Because when you think about it, so Kenny has to be built up now back up for redemption, and you think, right, so he has to get wins, because the last thing he did prior, I will not count the Stadium Stampede stuff, but the last thing he did as a singles was lose to MJF. So you need big wins for him to go back and face MJF. So it's like, okay, here's Zack Sabre Jr. He's won, he lost the first one in 2022 and lost to Claudia. All right.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yes.
Yeah. But then the next year he wins the TV 4-way, and the year after that he beats Orange Cassidy in Long Island, and then last year he defends the IWGP against Nigel McGuinness. So he's the New Japan guy with the winning record. He's the guy that like has the most kind of thing you say. Like, if you beat him, like, you've beaten somebody, because there is no one on the AEW side for Kenny to beat.
No.
Like,
not that's going to lay down anyway.
Like the one guy that is, and like, give some of the guys some praise. The one guy that is laying down this year, who's fulfilling that role, no matter which company he's in, whether he's the first choice or the second choice or the third choice, is Andrade, right? So
Right.
Andrade has come
Right.
back in, and we'll give him his due because I'd like to do it anyway. Because I didn't really talk about him on Dominion review, and I meant to. But he came back into AEW. You know, he filled in the Samoa Joe spot, put over Hangman. You know, and obviously they gave him the wins over. They gave him the win over Kenny and stuff. But you know, he came in, put him over clean. Right, okay, fine. He goes to New Japan, and you know, after Gabe gets injured, we need you to win the global because we obviously need to get on Suji because having a champion with two belts just doesn't work in the long term. And then we need you to just lose clean in the freeway. Yep, fine, does it. You know, he's consistently done that. And that's the one heel, you know, he had the win over Kenny, so you can do that back. But actually, Kenny's going to need the defense. So, like, somebody has to lose here as a heel. So it's like, it makes the most sense, like, in paper, like Zach fills that gap where you don't have these other people in that upper mid card that can do that right now, or can do that in general, which is a problem they run into over and over again, unless they're losing to certain people. Some rules are, it's a little bit 1984 with that. So it's like, yeah, he makes sense on paper. And actually, Zach cut a promo, you know, his post-match comments at Dominion, where he very much said, you know, if I beat Kenny, I'm going for the belt. So, and that was the idea, because essentially this is like a de facto number one contenders match, right? You maybe put another match in there, maybe after that for TV for Kenny, maybe, but I don't know. But it's like, that's what it's supposed to be. So it's like, presented that, and then, yeah, Kenny comes out and on Wednesday, and it's just, there's a great Kenny Omega promo out there, right? We see it when he goes to New Japan. We saw it in the build to Gabe Kid. We saw it when he went back with Ospreay. Like, when he's really in tune with something, or he really believes in it, he can deliver that sort of thing. And I don't believe that it can't be adapted for American television. But it's like, sometimes he just goes out there and you're like, what are you doing?
Well, even if it doesn't totally make sense, right? Like, I'm not saying that the promos has to make sense for it to be good, because we've seen some fucked up, like Jon Moxley every week is doing some fucking saying some crazy things, but they're good promos, right? He's the king of that. Yeah. The problem is with Kenny, it's like it feels like he's phoning it in, and it makes no sense. So you're kind of like, if it has to be at least one or the other, right? Because if it's not, then it's just like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Am I excited to see this? I don't know that I am.
Yeah, and he's got to raise his game, you know, because if you're going to be the main event guy all in, and like, he's still Kenny Omega. And I hear that a lot. And when he was absent for the build up to Double or Nothing, it was like, yeah, but he'll be fine because he's still Kenny Omega. But what occurs to me when I think about it recently is that there needs to be something more than that. Like, they're too reliant on that. And it's fine because he's Kenny, but the question in AEW has always been, yes, you have Kenny Omega and this is how you present him, but what happens if you present him as so much more? What happens if he can be so much more? And I guess that's the question going into the summer, because it's like, it's so on and off, it's so stop-start, and anyone that kind of raises any concerns about this build going into All In is like kind of pushed down because of one reason or another, or, you know, and a lot of it's like, we're still yet to see Redemption play out and stuff yet. So obviously I think there's still common belief that it'll be like Ospreay and MJF, and it's you know, it's not been that way for a while, but I guess that's the thing. So when you've had these things planned out for so long, as they have this year, but it doesn't feel like it almost feels like they got to Revolution and everything's just kind of gone haywire. Like, there's a difference, and it's kind of funny. Like, you take out Double or Nothing and the buy rate and the attendance, but which is not a short thing to take out. But you look at the live events, and there's a correspondence with that there too, in terms of TV too. So, you know, you saw growth in Q4, you saw growth in Q1 over the previous year, and in, you know, better performances in market to market. So it's kind of slipped back a little bit in Q2. So it kind of mirrors this kind of thing, but it does feel a little bit more chaotic in general. And you can feel that. And I guess it's that question. So when we looked at Dynasty and we look at like the Derby reign and how good that was, and you look at like the short term, long term, right? So this is the thing. I mean, we always talk about it, and it's like, sometimes it doesn't always match up with what's on TV, because you see like TV each week and you may enjoy it because you enjoyed that match, you enjoyed this match, but it's like, what is their long-term goal? If their long-term goal is to make, you know, Will Ospreay their big baby face, is what they're doing currently working in that thing. If their big goal is to deliver like the Kenny Omega Will Ospreay dream title match, how are they working towards that goal? Is it like, is everything they're doing productive in that sense? Is everything aimed in that location? Or is it everything a bit of a compromise where you have to keep everybody else or everybody happy and you have to work around everything? And then you kind of get these kind of disjointedness and that sort of thing, and some of the things that we're seeing as a result of that. And I think that it's when you talk to people there, it's like when they discuss like this booking, last year there was like a real clear clarity over everything building up to All In by Double or Nothing.
Yes.
Even in just in the run up in
yes.
April, there was like a confidence about people there. There was like, it wasn't like, this could happen, that could happen, or like I'm not really sure. It was like everything's locked in, everything's in step, everything's kind of fit. We know what we're doing, we know where we're going, we know we're going with this person, that person, this person, and across all the divisions as well. Like, and that sounds harsh. That sounds weird because you think, the tag division wasn't there, but they had a big tag team match planned for that show. They swapped a participant, but they still had the same road effectively. So they had all their major programs kind of locked in months and months before. Whereas this year, it's kind of there's kind of that, but the way is messy. So we're doing something and working backwards rather than having everything kind of planned out, like with the road and sort of things, so to speak. So it does feel different, and it's just a case of, is that just because it's like something like Forbidden Door impacting? Is this something else? Will it all kind of make sense in the end? We'll see. But there definitely isn't the same level of confidence from the talent there and who are involved around these talent as there was. Everyone's going to want to talk about it, so we might as well. But what did you think of the Will Ospreay Swerve Strickland promo?
Well, do you want to talk about that one part of it, or you want to talk about the other stuff? Well, the kayfabe stuff.
Which one do you want to talk about first? We'll talk about both.
All right, let's go to first. All right. We had Will Ospreay did a promo with Swerve, live in-ring promo segment, which I was looking forward to because I want to hear these guys talk to each other, because some of the stuff they did, again, talking about last year, the stuff they did was pretty freaking incredible. And Swerve and Ospreay's match at the Forbidden Door 2 years ago was fantastic. You and I talked about that extensively, and how behind Swerve the crowd was at the time. So anyway, they start this promo segment off. Will Ospreay comes out. Everybody knows he got married last weekend. He's talking about it everywhere. And Tony Schiavone introduces him, yada, yada, yada. He essentially starts his promo by saying he wanted to go on his honeymoon, but his wife said no, that he should come here because winning the Owen is really important to him. So he said, I got a good wife, man. So here's what I did to treat her. I took her upstairs. I smashed the life out of her bruv. I said, babe, clean yourself up. I got to go to Houston. Okay. And understandably so, there were people that didn't care for this element of the promo. I got to say, wasn't exactly something that I was like, woohoo, at the end of it either. Although the crowd did cheer quite loudly. Because it's just a level of kind of gross language, right? That you know,
Yeah.
So it just seems odd, right? So there's a user on Twitter named Catherine, excuse me, who said, she tweeted, much like when MJF does it, I'm sure Alex is absolutely fine with what he said. However, also like when MJF does it, what a gross way to talk about the love of your life, straight up dehumanizing and misogynistic language. Yuck. And before some dipshit comes into my replies with all who gives a shit, shut the fuck up as usual, the normalization and repeated use of sexist language affects us all, both in terms of what men and boys are told is okay to say and in what behavior women and girls are taught to accept, which is an absolutely spectacular and phenomenal point. And I don't entirely disagree with her. And of course, because this is wrestling and this is a woman expressing an opinion in wrestling that was a minority opinion, she was subjected to a shit ton of really fucking awful abuse from a bunch of men who are really, really angry that someone talked about Will Ospreay that way, including Will Ospreay, who told her to touch grass. And so, of course, that meant that she was subjected to even more racist and sexist abuse, not racist and sexist abuse from a bunch of men who were angry that she decided to talk about that. This is the kind of thing where there was a lot of really good and thoughtful stuff about this. And I think it's important to note that, like, and I'm certainly guilty of this at times, God knows, like, people can have different opinions of you about wrestling. Someone can watch a thing that you watched and say, hey, I didn't like this. I thought it was kind of gross. It didn't really appeal to me. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you have to do anything about it. You don't even have to respond. You could just let them have that opinion and move on with your life, which is very short. Eventually you will die. And the famous words of Trent Beretta, you're going to find out, you're going to go to marry a girl and she's going to find out you spent most of your life arguing with Dave Meltzer on Twitter. You're going to look like a fucking jackass. Like, what are you doing here? Right. And that's also what I wanted to say to Will Ospreay, which, God love him, the wrestlers have to fucking get off Twitter. MJF, all these guys, get off Twitter. You all have burner accounts for a reason. Use those, okay? Stop responding to people from your actual fucking accounts because you're never going to win the arguments and you're always going to look like an idiot. It doesn't help things, okay? Just let it go. But like, I do think that Americans in general, some of the stuff that Ospreay says, because we're not used to the way in which he says it, it comes across as cute, right? The delivery is cute or endearing to us. And so as a result, we don't pay as many attention to the words themselves, right? And I don't particularly care for people bringing their real life relationships into wrestling. I don't think it works. I think, you know, the ones that are successful are like Jon Moxley and Renee Paquette. I think that's a successful relationship on television because A, she doesn't wrestle, and B, they don't really do much with it. I think, you know, the way that Roderick Strong and Marina Shafir have handled their relationship on television has also worked because it's kind of like an Easter egg. If you don't know that they're married, you don't know that they're married. But if you do, it's kind of like a cute little thing. But I think we've seen with Sammy Guevara and Ty Mello, we've seen with Britt Baker and Adam Cole, it just doesn't ever seem to go well. There's limited payoff to it. It's a little bit weird. And I'm not really crazy about like shoot stuff. Like that's not my personal preference when it comes to watching wrestling. So if I'm also, this is the other thing that made me crazy about some of the discourse over this was the people that were like, you cannot speak about Will Ospreay's relationship. Like you are not allowed to have a criticism of this. How dare you? And I'm like, the motherfucker put it on TV. Okay. It's been on my fucking face every week. Okay. Which is fine. I'm not saying it's the end of the world. Like in some cases, it's kind of a cute interaction, but like, you can't tell me that I can't comment on it when you're fucking putting it on TV. I'm not going to somebody's house. I'm not stalking their Instagram. I'm watching the fucking show. Like, it's on the fucking show. Don't tell me I can't talk about it. Okay. And like, if this is how she wants to be spoken of, and this is the relationship they have, great. But it's not the greatest language I've ever heard in my life. It didn't thrill me with joy. And it's not the kind of thing, if somebody else said I didn't really care for it, I kind of go, yeah, I think it's kind of crass. And I move on with my life. Right. Like, but I want to just circle back to my other point, which is people are allowed to have different, like, I think one of the things that we see so much in wrestling, and you and I have talked about this, is the idea that there's one way to watch it. And like, there's one way to watch and engage with wrestling. And if you try to talk about it in any other way, then, you know, and if you're a woman or a person of color and you're trying to talk about it in another way,
forget it. No.
Fuck you. Like you're going to just, you know, you're going to, parasocial is going to get trotted out if you're a girl, right? Because you can't, if you have an opinion, it's parasocial. Meanwhile, he's the fucking guy putting it on TV. Right. Yeah. So I think that we all could be a little bit more understanding and read what the person is actually saying and not what we think they're saying. Right. Try to approach this with like maybe a little bit of kindness and say, hey, you know, I get why you didn't like this. It didn't really bother me, but like, the other thing that also makes me crazy, and I'm going to come back to this one, like if a woman tells you that she thinks the thing is sexist, you and you're a man, you kind of can't go, no, it wasn't. Other women might be allowed to disagree with her. And I'm not saying that every woman saying something is sexist is always 100% right. But most of the time, you guys are not always the best indicators of what sexism is. And I have to give a lot of props to the people. And I saw a few dudes do this who were like, yeah, I saw the discourse. I noped out of that one. I didn't need to engage. We can all do that. We can all just not engage if we disagree with something. We can watch wrestling the way we want to watch it. So this was the drama for all this shit. And I say what I said, Ospreay, fucking get off Twitter. It's not helping you. Yeah, you're supposed to be the big baby face. And like you say here and here, Todd Martin says he came across as an off-putting weirdo. And he absolutely did. He absolutely came across as an off-putting weirdo with this comment. Even if you didn't think it was sexist, it was just fucking weird.
Yeah, and you know, I wrote that because I listened to it and it's like, it's so, the thing that kind of got to me was the reaction to women around this, the reaction to men, and the idea that women are one collective group and they must all support this wrestler or that wrestler and they must all think like that, and therefore like they're something we have to stand up for when we feel like it, but also something that has to be criticized because they may think differently about wrestling. We've all fought the same way with one voice for the last however many years, and this is a challenge to it. It's my football thing all over fucking again, honestly. Right. And it's like, so what frustrates, you know, so I put that quote there, and obviously Dave Meltzer spoke about it in the Observer and said, you know, it's not something for 2026. Like, it's something that you could have been said in the 70s and 80s, but that's not the world today. You know, times change. And people weren't pulling up them quotes and criticizing those people. You know, they
No.
weren't criticizing the men on Twitter that were commenting about it who felt that it was misogynistic language, because the whole point of it is it's not about, oh, collective, you know, because everyone's like, oh, you know, they're really mad that he had sex with his wife. Like, no, that's not the language you're looking at. Like, if you're doing that, you're completely missing the point, which I think is purposeful at times. But it's like, the idea is it's like, oh, you know, I did this to her and then I left her because I got to go to work and she's less important. And, you know,
Right,
like, clean
aftercare
yourself
is
up.
important.
It's crass. Yeah, it's like, it's crass, right? Because it's like, oh, you know, clean up yourself, love. Like, I did this to you, like, clean up yourself. It creates that sexist. Like, honestly, like, if someone said that was like talking like that on my train, right? And they do every Saturday night, I get some idiots or something like saying words. So I'd be like, yeah, come on, mate, like, shut the fuck up. No one needs to hear that, because my job is to make sure everyone feels safe and comfortable. And I don't always manage to do that because it's the railway. It's hard, but it's like, that's our job, right? Because these things aren't acceptable just to be said out in public in general, like in talked about in that way, because it feels like, you know, to some people, like it's been like the other person's being objectified, and that's not to take away their agency. But then she isn't there even saying it. It's not like they're saying, oh, we did this and, you know, we had a great time, and I'm like, yeah, fair play, right? That's different. Like, it's saying, I did this to her and then I left her to clean herself up, and I was like, yeah, I need to go to work now, but you don't need to come to work even though you're working in the same company. So it's like, that's what people objectify to the language. They're not objecting to the fact that they had sex as like married people. Like, come on now, like, grow up. It's like, actually look for the issue rather than what you want it to be, like you said earlier. So yeah, but I just think like the thing about this for me was his reaction to it. And you're right, he needs to get off Twitter, because the first, you know, the only person he reacted to happened to be a woman that's a fan, you know, well-known fan of the, you know, of Pro Wrestling Eve in London. It's almost a little bit too personal. And for him, like, one, if you're reacting this way now, between that and the Suji thing this week, like, you have, I understand, like, a huge amount of pressure. And obviously, I think there was some stuff with Alex Windsor and she got run off social media this week, and I think that probably plays a part in it. But
Sure.
This was not somebody involved in that, right? This was, so you went for somebody that you weren't even tagged in it. Like, you went and found this.
Yeah.
Then do that. And it basically created a dog pile of all this abuse. And, you know, and we've seen wrestlers in AEW, especially babyface in the past, shut down like dog piles on people who were abusing them. And it's like, it's completely different emphasis. So you allowed that to happen. And for someone who was given like a second persona, essentially, when they joined AEW, you know, whose social media conduct around women, let's be honest, before that was not great, you know, and I'm only going to list these out because if I don't, people say we're picking on him. So, but if you had a history where you publicly dog walked a female wrestler for, you know, not putting enough effort in on excursion, only for them to then have to be forced to reveal that they had a family death and then apologize, and you treated allegations of sexual assault as completely false from the moment they went up and posted straight away on social media, then there's all the allegations of blackballing around, you know, female talent in Pollyanna, because of actions by your friend Scott Wainwright. And then you have, you know, a angle that you do in New Japan with connotations of domestic violence, which chased a lot of people away at that period of time, then maybe it should be something that you're really conscious of, you know, because you've been able to kind of craft a different persona there. And you go into that babyface role and that top babyface role in a company. And I'm not 100% sure he's actually going to get into that spot. I look at the way they present him since he's come back, and I don't see them as presenting him as the top guy. Not even close, in fact.
No.
We'll talk about the other part of the pro in a minute with that. But it's like, if you're going to be that, you have to be white and white. We talk about this all the time, right? Especially in a company that wants to present itself as open to everybody, as AEW is. And that doesn't mean that he's a bad guy. It doesn't mean that he doesn't do great things for other people. But it does mean that you have to be mindful of this stuff. Moxley just needs to teach him to lose his Twitter password. Yep. You don't learn lessons for the deaf, or just lose your Twitter password, because obviously, like, you are not using this in an effective way. You are not using it in anything way that's building you up or making you more, you know, it's just not working. And, you know, you don't want people, you want people to think that you've matured, because that's what you sold everybody on. And that's what people say you have. So, like, you just cut that shit out, because it was completely unnecessary. It felt weirdly personal, and it's just unneeded. Because then it creates this stockpile where everyone then thinks it's acceptable to then go after these people. And you can't do that in this day and age, because people don't need an excuse, do they?
They don't.
They don't need an excuse. But yeah, it's not like you then went and, you know, took Dave Meltzer's comments and made a general comment on it or something like that. You know, even then it's like a journalist, you know, that's someone different. But no, you just went. So, you know, yeah, just need to sort that out. But I didn't think, you know, moving on to his wider promo,
Right.
So I think it was like the first time in a while that we've had like a promo exchange between two people that wasn't just like you talking and I talking, that's it.
Right. They're actually speaking to each other, which I
Yeah,
appreciated.
right.
Because
Yeah,
usually it's the MJF monologue city.
sure. So we've had very little of that this year. I think we had a little bit at the start of the year, you know, when you were doing the kind of the Swerve Page Omega stuff and Andrade. They were playing off each other, you know, a lot in those opening segments. And then we've kind of moved away from that kind of um post revolution, really, because then we've had some weird stuff, and then obviously Darby does something slightly different, so, and that's not a bad thing, you know, you have that change up, it's not bad, but we've not had one of those segments for a while, so I think people kind of jumped on because it's like, yeah, we've actually got two characters interacting and pulling stuff from the past and, you know, actually discussing things rather than just kind of like existing in their own kind of little world, and all of a sudden it's like it clashes and we just don't really have a lot to talk about. So, you know, there was some clever stuff worked back in, you know, they worked back in things from last year. But then for Ospreay's side, what got me was I just thought that it was really weak for him as the babyface in this, in terms of his wants, in terms of his reasoning, and in terms of presenting him as like someone for people to believe in that regard.
The whole thing just, you know, we haven't really gotten a lot from Ospreay about wanting to win at Wembley. Like it hasn't, like he's sort of said it, but he hasn't really had like a moment where he's like, I need this for whatever. And so like Swerve is basically like, what happened to you? You know, we fought the Death Riders together last year. Now you've joined them. What have you done? And I think he did start off with something interesting in terms of like, I had to accept it. I couldn't fight it anymore. But the whole reason why he had to accept it is because he watched other people get excited that their football teams were winning at Wembley and decided that he had to do that for wrestling. I was like, what the fuck?
He's a secret Bolton Wanderers fan.
He didn't say I watched people. He didn't say I'm a football fan. I watched people win at Wembley. I want a moment like that for myself in that place. It was, I watched other people get excited that people won at Wembley. And I think one of the challenges with something like that, when you compare wrestling to an actual sport, is that you can do it. Like you can compare wrestling to an actual sport, but we all know that wrestling is scripted. So it's hard in that moment to be like, you know, me winning this is the exact same thing as someone kicking a game winning goal. Right. And I get why he was trying to tie it to the World Cup, and I appreciate that and yada, yada, but it just didn't work. Like there was no real reasoning behind it. And I appreciate that not every wrestler is going to have like the acting chops to pull some major thing off, but I frankly thought Swerve ate him up. Like Swerve's rationale was completely reasonable and understandable. Like, where have you been? Why are you siding with these guys? And Ospreay had nothing for him.
Yeah, and so he was like left with, you know, I'm kind of using them, which is not really a babyface thing.
Right.
And they helped me fix my neck. Well, and like they helped me fix my neck, and it's like that's so strange to me because, like, when you look at it, right, we've always talked about like the biggest problem with like this Ospreay push was the fact that it would feel handed to him because he came in at the top, right? So he needed obstacles in order to overcome. And I didn't think he needed like a massive story or tried to like tell stories like, you know, likes of Paige and Swerve do, or you know, Tony on the other side in the other division. Like, I didn't think he needed to be that sort of storyteller because he's not, right? I just thought he needed obstacles to overcome, so then you give him something to get people behind him in a way that's different from the way they have previously, as we talked about. You know, if you want to turn him into a top draw, essentially. So they thought they booked one and they fell into another in a way, in a harsh way, where he lost the Owen final last year to Paige. And you thought you could really build off that failure and experiencing that failure. And they didn't do that. You know, they talked about Paige in terms of like the things around not, you know, once they defeat the Death Riders, it's not really changed anything. But they didn't talk about his personal failure and how that affected him coming out of that. And then you have the neck injury. And then the neck injury, what we've done is rather than him overcoming that neck injury, like that's now been given as a device to the Death Riders. Like he's not had that agency to overcome unless you're saying he's using people. Like it's so cloudy. It's like, it needs to be his agency. It needs to be him. Like, that's how people are going to do it. They don't like, oh, you know, I want that boyhood dream. Like, that's like, I think Aaron Watkowski wrote an excellent article, like comparing it to like the Shawn Michaels thing. And I went, holy fuck, that's too scary because that's too close. Like, that's not what you want. Like, that doesn't give you that level of investment. And it's like, and then you compare it to like, and then he's going on about, why didn't you save me from that attack? And it's like, well, you didn't save Swerve when he got taken out by Wardlow, and that was before then. Like, what the fuck were you doing? Like, none of it made. So I thought it was a really good exchange, but none of it kind of made you more behind the babyface. In essence, it made me think, yes, Swerve's right. And actually, like, why don't we support this guy? And that's not what it's supposed to do. And it's like, from Swerve's perspective, I understand him taking a shot because, it's his first live promo since March, he talked about his 6 weeks. I think you can figure out that this year. I think that's kind of getting overlooked a little bit. But it's like, he gave that opportunity and I'm going to go for this because, I think Rich had a line about, it felt like he was thinking it might be the last one I get in this, live promo in this company in terms of the approach adopted. And that's kind of a very interesting line. But it's like, yeah, he took it like, think of it like it's my last shot sort of thing. And he did absolutely deliver. And I think he's delivered. That's the best promo he's cut all year. I wasn't a fan of some of the power stuff that he did early in the year. I just didn't feel that. Whereas this one, at least he got into those human issues and got real in the same way that he's done with programs in the past. But it was like, yeah, and then I thought, what got me more actually was seeing that they've announced matches for both of them this week. Because I thought there needs to be a second part of this, like a major face-to-face, not a, he cuts like a babyface promo, like, I need to win the Owen, and I did like, we've seen that. It wasn't very good. Like, there needs to be some sort of like change in between the two characters in terms of the mentality that makes you feel more sympathetic with the babyface, which is where your allegiances should lie, and sees them kind of get into the head a little bit of the heel and explore their motivations. Because there's lots that you can do that with Swerve. You can look at that this year and say, and start to play on that. And they really didn't get into that because it became like an exposition of like the Ospreay character. But the more that they did that, the more it kind of unwound and left Strickland feeling like the cool guy, essentially.
Well, it was like, I get why it made sense like that they should call back to last year. And it made sense that should be part of the promo. But I kept thinking, yeah, it was, what did happen here? And like, it was one of the few times that I was like, oh, I do feel like Hangman should be here for this. Like, why isn't he? And I just feel like you could have, like, again, with the Kenny stuff, there's opportunity here that you just didn't take. And I don't know why, because so much like what you are doing isn't good. So, or isn't that, not isn't good, but isn't particularly interesting. So why wouldn't you take an advantage of this and try and do something here?
And he's available. They've been in contact since the start of but maybe just like before June. So that's a little bit. There was some stuff this year where it's like these people are available and you're not kind of doing them. But that's the other thing I thought was weird. I thought it actually centered too much around Page between that and the MJF one, and it's good because you want to see it in some ways because you want to see him built up before he's brought back, because obviously they're building up to that to be a really important storyline for 2027, probably their most important. But at the same time, it's like he felt bigger than like that, and it's like the way he was talked about, and it's like that's not what you should be doing. It's complicated, right? Because you're trying to do multiple things in one sort of go. But
I just think both of these this segment and the Kenny segment really kind of underline to me that you have two guys that should be the center of your television and should have been for probably weeks now. And they feel like they're sort of sleepwalking through it a little bit. Ospreay doesn't feel like, he just doesn't feel like he's driving the narrative. It's like, what are other people doing to him? Which again is fine.
Well, Moxie's driving the narrative essentially,
and that's fine. But like, not I don't know. It's not working for me. So I'm just kind of like, all right. Like, again, let's see what happens, right?
Yeah,
this could end up being fantastic.
It feels so contradictory to last year in terms of the agency and being on the baby faces, right? And I don't think that's just him. I think that's quite a lot across the board. We don't hear going back to not hearing much from baby faces, with the exception, I think they've done a good job with Maya World with kind of building her up, and something they fell into, and she's obviously dealing with something that's really difficult and has kind of really taken the opportunity that's also been placed at the same time. But in general, like, we're not really seeing that in the same way that we were last year, where it felt like baby faces talk, like they were in constant kind of communication with the audience, that they had a run of people that felt hot as baby faces. And it's important because at the end of the day, it's baby faces that sell tickets. right?
Yep.
Heels are obstacles so much, but you need the baby faces to overcome them is what sells tickets. And, that's going to be the focus on. The same way like WWE have got their upcoming Minneapolis shows in a few weeks. They're at just under 24K for both nights. That's going to be a focal point, isn't it, for the next few weeks? And then after that, it's going to be Wembley. And they were at what they are now, 25,700. So they're going to be a long, long way off of 2024, and you just have to accept that at this point. Last year they did like 43% of their total attendance from 15K to 27K, like just under 12K in the last 6 weeks. Like, you are not doing 43% of this, like, current, of the overall attendance at Wembley in the last few weeks. We don't buy tickets in the UK in the same way that they do in the US. There isn't this huge late walk up in the last few weeks, just because of the way transportation works here and how difficult it is to get there and some things. And even like they did 12,000 just under 12,000 as well in the build up in 2024 in the last 6 weeks, which was like 21%, 22%, sorry, 20.8. And it's like, if you get to 28K by redemption, you're looking at that to get 40. And 40 is like your bare minimum, really, in that building, because of the building it's in. It's in a massive, massive building. So there is a pressure to do that, and you will need something more, and you'll get a few thousand off blue light as well, as our equivalent like vet ticks for emergency workers. But you're going to need a bit more to get this to a point where it's going to look good, it's going to feel big. Because the last thing you want, if you've waited this long to crown Ospreay, and you've had to in some ways because the fans keep picking someone else, and I would be worried, if they put Kenny in the O and it was him, that could have happened this year again. But when you wait that long and you want him, to be the draw of this third Wembley show, like, it needs to feel like a success afterwards, don't it? Because otherwise that's going to be on your card straight away, and people are going to look at that. Like, because that's what I do, right? Because as soon as he gets that belt, he's going to be like, everyone's eyes on him.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that they aren't right now. But everyone's eyes will be on you and every single thing you do, and they'll be waiting for you to slip up and any sort of thing. And those first impressions in terms of like everything they look at Wembley will be the first thing that sits on that card. And then it gets harder from there. And then it gets harder in your own company from there, because you've already got people, pitching here, there, and everywhere at the moment. You think that's not going to get better? No, it's going to get worse, because then you're the target, because you're in the spot that they want to be in. So it's like, this has to be at a certain level. So that's why everyone's pushing it. Like, what are you doing now? Like, what is your long-term goal to get there? Because you've set this up as a tentpole show. And as soon as you create a tentpole show, then you have to deliver a tentpole show in all aspects, and that's where we always look like long-term, short-term, but that's the reason why. There we go. Have you anything else to add on Forbidden Door? I am looking forward to, hopefully getting some undercard tags. That freeway tag looks pretty cool to me. I think that's probably the thing I'm most excited for on this card, to be honest. And yeah, the Tekla Starlight Kid as well. I like to see that.
That'll be good.
But yeah, I think that's anything else you've got to add on that one? Or we
No.
I think we're done.
I think we've covered it, baby.
Yeah, we've covered some good, some bad, some in the middle. I don't know today. Is what it is. We do our thing. But yeah, I mentioned earlier, if you want to hear me, God, no one wants to hear me. But now, if you do want to hear me and Jeremy and Josh review Dominion, and you've not heard Keeping It Strong Style from last week yet, head over there and you can hear that. It was nice to join those boys and not have to bore you silly about New Japan for a week, and I could just do them instead. No.
I like hearing about New Japan.
I know, but yeah, it's it's always fun. It's always fun when we get to do other things and go and visit people. So always cool. So yeah, head over to listen to that. Also on our network, you will find the wonderful Tunnel Talk. And I quite enjoyed the fact that I think they felt very differently about the Ospreay Swerve promo to what we did. I feel like they felt like they'd been on a drought recently.
He did absolutely pronounce it oink up. Oink up.
Yeah.
I was like, no, oink up. Yep, 100%.
But yeah, so I like that, because I like that we have different opinions on our network and stuff, and just
girls don't always think the same.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it? Like, we have different opinions, but if you want to hear their different opinions, but also they're much more in depth than us, look into different AEW characters, storylines, and just how would I get through summer? Because I could do with that right now. It's fucking horrendous. You can find Tonal Talk on wherever you get your podcasts every Sunday morning. Join the gang, including our wonderful producer Leah, who will be turning this show around on another crazy turnaround because I am useless. But no, thank you very much to Leah for everything she does for us. You can also find the rest of the great podcasts on our network over at Red Circle, wherever you get your podcast. You can join the Social Suplex Discord, which currently is a football Discord. Let's be honest. We just watch World Cup. We just watch World Cup, don't we, at the moment? But if you want to come and watch some World Cup stuff with us and discuss a little wrestling, you can find us through the Discord link at socialsuplex.com. And socialsuplex.com is also where you will find a Social Suplex newsletter, crazy amounts of news, wonderful features, the best coverage of Japan as a totality that you will find anywhere in the world, and all for free. So that's also at socialsuplex.com. Next issue out next week. You can also contact ourselves at Trish and Sarah Pod on Twitter, under our own names on Blue Sky, and at trishandsarahpod@gmail.com for email. I forgot that was for then. That's how we're going today. So yeah, if you have any questions, any queries, any comments, anything at all, that's where you can find us. We will be back. I couldn't even say that, in 2 weeks' time, and I expect that you will not be going to Slammiversary.
No.
Skipping that bad boy. No. I have a life.
I have a life.
Did you see the Mr. Elegant stood at the side of the road thing with the Hardys?
People were trying to get me to go to that. They were in Boston and he tried to get me to go to that. And I was like, I'm not going to that. That's so embarrassing. And he was literally just standing across from the Tea Party Museum with his shirt off and a really tiny pair of jean shorts.
Right.
And with a Hardy next to him. And I was like, it didn't even look like it was something that they had organized, TNA. It looked like it was basically just the Hardys and Mr. Elegance being like, let's go outside and give away some free tickets. Hey, whatever works. Whatever gets you through the night.
Yeah, you gotta fill the building somehow, right? But yeah. But obviously, this weekend there is 4 shows running this weekend across it in the US. So that will probably be one of the focal points when we come back in 2 weeks' time. So we thank you for listening today. I know it's not always been a fun listen today, but these are in some of them are important topics that we have to get to. But until next time, really. So until 2 weeks. I've been Trish.
I've been Sarah.
And this has been the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. We do thank you for listening.